Do you struggle this time of year? Do you feel blue in the winter? Do you find yourself depressed? Don't worry, a lot of people are. And today we're going to talk about dealing with winter blues. This is episode 123 of the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Danny. I'm here with my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Hey, Danny.
Yeah,
This
so
is
the winter blues. Go ahead.
a timely episode. A timely episode
Yeah.
coming out just before Blue Monday, historically the most depressing day of the year. And I remember
Yeah,
some years, January has historically been rough. End of January, beginning of February, because the holidays are over. It's cold, depressing winter weather. Football's over. So, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. It's funny too, because that's the thing. I used to always think that it must be the holidays are the worst time. But in fact, they're not. It's, the new year started. And, for a lot of people, things don't change just because the new year starts, and that makes it very difficult and challenging. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Plus,
we both struggled with winter
Valentine's Day coming up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so for single people, it's rough. For people in relationships, it can be rough too.
Yeah.
Just because relationships may not
it's rough
be
for
going
everybody.
as well as you want it. Yeah, it's just tough. And so there's a lot of stuff going on this time of year that makes it difficult. So today's episode, we're going to talk about navigating that.
Yeah, I was thinking too, because this is probably also really important now, because a lot of people I know in the US, because everything that's happened with the pandemic, there's a lot of people that aren't working or aren't in work that they're happy in or whatever. And so that can also be a huge factor too, is, if you're trying to navigate changing your career, doing new stuff, it can be really difficult at times and overwhelming. I think that's also, an important factor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how do you, when do you think this has most affected you, or do you still find yourself struggling with this every year? Or?
Yeah, I'm shocked, and I'm sure I'm going to listen to this in a week and I'll be like, whatever. But this winter, I feel very, very good, and it may be, it could be for a whole host of different reasons, but things we do this every week. Every week we get to talk with our best friend and talk about problems and how to address them. So that's very helpful. Building up practices.
It is surprisingly helpful.
Yeah. It's the greatest therapy you could ever ask for. So there's that we have going for us this year. There's also just building up routines that I've been doing to help maintain and cultivate a positive mindset. And there's exercise and fresh air and all these things that I've been doing. So I think they've all contributed to a pretty good mental state. And also, I was listening to some stuff that was very helpful. One was that book Dare that we talk about all the time.
And then
another thing is a Jim Rohn audio series. He's a motivational speaker, and he was talking about seasonal depression, his thing, back, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. And he basically just said, granted, it's going, whatever it is for whoever it is, whatever, but he's basically saying it's kind of just like an excuse. And I started looking at it that way, because for the longest time, I was convinced that I had seasonal depression, because the wintertime would come and I'd start feeling bad. The holidays are over. There's not much going on. Feels like time slows down. Got broken up with multiple years on Valentine's Day. It's just
never helps, right?
And I was just I just associated myself with seasonal depression. And then all of a sudden it's that's an excuse. Granted, many times during the winter, I feel depressed, but does that mean that I have seasonal depression? No. And actually kind of looking forward to it each time of the year makes it more likely to happen. So this year I kind of have a different perspective on it, and, cross my fingers, so far doing pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. It's funny. I had a rough patch before the holidays, but it was short. And I think, again, all this stuff has helped immensely. So our meeting and everything, and that's been really, really helpful. And knock on wood, January's going pretty well so far. So I am feeling better. And I think, but it's something we've both struggled with for a long time. And I think it's interesting, because that idea that it is an excuse is interesting. I think, and everybody is different, but, there is a sense in which, it is a choice, right? Also, because, and that's always this is always what gets me about, at least in my own experience with depression and that powerlessness that you feel and stuff. There's a sense in which it is a choice, But when you're in that mindset, it's so hard to course correct. Like, even though you know what you have to do, it becomes you work against yourself so much that it's like, it
I
can feel
like
like you know control.
I like that you said it's so hard to course correct, because that is 100% true. The thing is, you need to take preemptive action. It's like a
Yeah.
preemptive strike that you need to do on it to help, so that you're on a different course. Because once you're on the
Yeah. Right.
course it's already heading in the wrong direction, it takes so much energy to change it, and you're not in a mindset where you have energy, and you're not in a mindset where
No.
possibility even exists. But we are going to talk about some things later on in the episode you can do in case you
We
are
are.
in that space. But I like
That
how
is the
you said
worst.
it's hard to course correct, because setting
Yeah.
up the routines before it happens is so much easier. They say like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, you know?
No, it really is though. You're right too. And the amount of energy it requires to get out of that is like, you can literally, it can take years for people in serious situations to get out of it because it's so challenging. And like you said, you have no energy. And I always found that the worst part. It's funny because like I notice myself sometimes when I feel tired, I like panic. Like, if you're like exhausted one day because you don't sleep enough or something, I start to panic because I'm like, oh God. And it's like, oh no, I'm just sleepy because you feel
Mhm.
tired. It's that
Oh
feeling
yeah,
is always associated with it though.
dude, tiredness causes a whole bunch of issues. Like
Oh,
we were
yeah.
talking about this the other day about how I've been researching, sleeping and napping and everything like that. And dude,
Mhm.
they did this study with basketball players where they told half of the team to get as much sleep as possible, like 10 plus hours if you can, and the other half just do your normal schedule. And then at the end of the thing, the people who were sleeping extra were faster, were stronger, had better response times, were playing better. Like everything was better. And people are just lacking sleep.
Well, and we push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves. And then, like, when we do have time to sleep, we watch TV, do all these things that distract us. And it's like, it's so important because when you get tired, you just can't deal with the day. I think that's like a huge part of it, is just feeling like you can deal with your day is like such an important countermeasure to depression. Like feeling like you can get through it and have the energy, have the strength, have the tools to get through your day. That's so important. It's like, it's interesting. I think everything we do, there's always resistance. That it's like everything we want to do in our lives. Like I think Nietzsche said, like, willing something is willing the power to overcome the resistances you'll meet. And I've always liked that way of phrasing it because it's, whatever you're going to do in the world, there's going to be something that's pushing back, and you need to have the power or energy to overcome it in order to make it happen.
Yeah. I like how you said also dealing with your day, because all that you ever need to do is deal with today.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do. And oftentimes when the blues come, you start seeing like you have to deal with your whole life. You have to solve all of your problems right now. And that's never true. Never true. All you have to do is get through today. And I remember last year when I was suffering a bit from depression, I remember I would be going to work, and every day I would drive up to where I was working, and I would get out of my car and I would look, and there were some woods there, and oftentimes the sun was rising. So I just like take a moment to appreciate that beauty I saw there in the morning. And I'd be like, okay, all I have to do today, I know I'm not feeling great. All I have to do is get through today. I'm going to do the best that I can today. You know, whatever help I get is awesome, but I'm just going to do the best I can today. Starting out with some beauty, let's go do the best I can. And that was just like every day. I just did that day after day after day. And eventually you get through this season because, like I said, Blue Monday, third Monday of January, typically the most depressing time of the year. But guess what?
Yeah.
After the most depressing time of the year, in June is typically the happiest time of the year. So it's coming. All you have to do
Oh,
is get
it's a
through the worst.
steady increase for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the
Yeah.
seasons.
You made such a good point too about the, you know, when you feel that way, feeling like everything has to change. And I think that is one of the hardest things is that, when you get depressed, it's like what it takes to get through it is little actions and just doing little things. But what your mind focuses on is all these huge things because those huge things reinforce your powerlessness. Like, oh, I can't resolve my debt right now. And you're like, well, no. If you're in a situation like it's going to take time, you're going to have to work on it slowly. You can do it, but it's going to take time to do. It's not going to be immediate. And we get in that mindset where like, if I can't fix these things immediately, then it just is never going to happen. And it's this really, it's this like negativity loop that's really self-destructive and damaging, and it sucks. And I think a lot of people do go through it all the time. And like you said, now it's historically the worst time of the year coming up. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we've already mentioned a few things sort of, but what are some things you do to try and, because you were talking about preparation. I think that is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do to prepare?
So I have a whole bunch of stuff, but before we get into that, I did just want to bring up one more thing about Blue Monday. So basically,
Okay.
the guy who was the originator
Oh,
of Blue Monday, he basically had a calculation to pick out what specific date it was, and it was dependent upon a whole bunch of different factors. So like some of the factors were weather conditions. So clearly, cold weather in a
obviously,
lot of
yeah.
the world, pretty dismal, especially when you don't see the sun anymore, when you don't see the blue skies, when it's cloudy and gray a lot. Debt level. So like a lot of people this time of year, they've spent a lot for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for New Year's, and now they may have a lot more debt than they're used to having. And maybe they're not making as much at work, maybe, who knows, whatever. The time since Christmas. So because Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. Well, it's over. Now you have to wait a whole nother year until that again.
To get to there.
The time since your New Year's resolution has been broken. So like it's 10 days
3
into the
weeks.
new year and you're
Yeah.
already done. All these things you plan to do, you already failed. So like you have that on your plate, low motivation levels, and also a feeling of need to take action, which is a good thing to have, but oftentimes it feels bad because you're disgusted with yourself. So like all of these things together are kind of priming this time of year to be rough.
Yeah. Those are good reasons though. It's like, I think it's funny too, because I think, for a lot of people too, when you're in debt coming up to the holidays, you use the holidays as a justification to like not, to go overboard, whatever, do these things. And then you realize the implications of it fully afterwards. And that's hard to stomach, I think, for a lot of people. And it's like, our bad behaviors are sometimes reinforced, and that's where we also feel like we can't change, but we can. And I think that's the important thing.
And it's rough. Like when I just spent more money than I intended to the other day. And it's like the buyer's remorse you get afterwards, where you're just like sick to your stomach about it. And you're like, why did I do that? And you're like, I know I shouldn't have done that, but you did it and you can't undo it. Yeah. So now you just have to learn from it and put things in place so you don't do it again.
It's funny. I used to, especially growing up in the United States, I think everybody shops as a way to like feel better. And I used to do that so much more, and I totally stopped. And it's like, it's one thing if you need something, but it just feels so much better. You don't feel so pushed and pulled by these things that don't matter. And, you don't feel so, I think you don't stress yourself out also so much by putting yourself in a situation where you can't meet your day-to-day needs that are necessary.
Yeah.
And I think it's super helpful. Yeah. It's funny.
So you asked earlier what routines do I have in place to help combat this? And I think it's the same. Oh, okay. We'll have to cut right here.
I lost you for a second. Yeah.
Okay, cut here. So
it's a good system.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, like, what routines do I have in place to help deal with this? And I don't think the routines that I have were necessarily meant to deal with the winter blues, but I'm just shocked at how well they do. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So like,
dude, totally. Yeah.
So like the routines that I'm going to mention, and I'm sure the routines you'll mention too, were things that I put in place to develop the character of somebody who I want to become, to basically be the person who I want to be, to enjoy my life, to be grateful for my life, and to have health, to have happiness, all these things. And these were like routines that I put into practice. And now I'm just noticing how much of a difference it makes in not being depressed this time of year.
Yeah, it's funny. The reason why I asked that too is that I was curious, because that's been my experience. I didn't necessarily do anything directly to combat it, but I think just all the positive things I've been doing have just helped. And I think that's just the trick of it, right? Is doing things. And it's funny. I was going to mention too, I think New Year's resolutions are not a good idea, actually.
No,
I think
terrible.
it's great to enter the new year and try and enter it optimistically, energetically. That's great, but I think you're much better off working on yourself throughout the year, committing to it and just having it as an ongoing thing, not because you set this pressure on yourself immediately. Like, I'm going to start going to the gym 5 days a week when you haven't gone at all,
And
or
you
I'm going to
totally
start,
overdo it.
and it's, yeah, exactly. Like, if you haven't worked out at all, you're not gonna stick to an hour a day, 5 days a week. It's just not gonna work. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too difficult. It's just not gonna happen. You have to start slower. And I think one of the things I really realized doing this with you over the past, little over a year, and even before that, is like everything does take time, and it's really incremental steps. But the further you go, the more it builds, and the more things you start adding, and it just gets better and better. And I think that's, there's not these quick changes or quick things like, resolutions that are just going to make us better people. You have to work on it. And you have to cultivate it.
Yeah. There are a couple somewhat quick things that I did want to mention.
Well, there always are. Yeah. But
Okay. So the first thing that I actually noticed from like the 2 years of COVID pandemic, like pretty much during the whole pandemic, all bars were closed and I just didn't feel motivated to drink. So I didn't drink at all during that whole time.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, bars opened back up. So I went to bars a couple times, and like going out with friends and drinking is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I noticed this severe impact the next day, like feeling terrible, not hungover, but just feeling terrible, and also feeling the addiction of wanting to go do it again, to like have that good feeling again. So like, drugs and alcohol definitely aren't going to help winter blues. I know how much in the movies they like romanticize that drugs and alcohol are the way to get through depression. Like anytime somebody's sad, you see them downing whiskey at a bar.
Well, and also like our the concept of like the struggling artists and stuff and all of that, and like the associations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so cutting that stuff out is going to make a huge difference. First off, also caffeine. A lot of people are way over caffeinated, and I learned this actually after listening to that book Dare, because he was talking about that, how most people are just way over caffeinated, and a lot of the anxiety and the negative feelings I had were just because I was drinking way too much caffeine. Like I remember when I was working at the vet clinic last year, like I was drinking caffeine from 8 a.m. until like midnight every day. And I remember sometimes I was working the night shifts there, and I was like having panic attacks there, probably just because of way too much caffeine. Like, I'd have to go outside, get some fresh air. I thought because my life was so stressful, but I think it was just too much caffeine.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned. I was thinking about that the other day. I went to a local convenience store to go get something, and like it just dawned on me that they have like every drink is an energy drink now. It's insane. Like if you just are down, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I drink a fair amount of coffee. I do, but like I think if that's all you're drinking, it's like it's definitely raising your levels and amping you up for panic and for stress and for worry and for just not, being on the line. I think you make a good point. It's like I drink maybe a few times a year, if that anymore. I don't really, and it's especially the next day is very hard. And if I do now, I make a point of planning because I'm prepared for it. And like, if I'm going to do that, because it's just, if you do it all the time, it just wears you down and it just drains you and it makes it harder, each day to deal with the things you need to deal with. And ultimately you feel much better not doing it all the time. I think it just definitely is the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention that is a definite quick fix dealing with depression and the feelings that come around with it, at least for me, is that book Dare by Barry McDonough. Now, I know that book is about anxiety and worry and panic attacks, but in it, he has kind of a 4-step system where like when the anxiety comes up, you say whatever, you accept and allow it. I forget the other 2 parts. So basically read the book. But what I found is that like because I noticed what happened was around the same time I was experiencing anxiety a few months ago, a friend of mine who has seasonal depression, he started getting really depressed, and it terrified me because I'm I'm like, oh no, what
Oh
happens
yeah.
if that happens to me? Like I thought I was good. And I started getting really, really scared about getting depressed. And so I used the technique. I was like, because oftentimes it's that fear that bring it that like we spiral because we're
Yeah.
afraid of
Oh yeah.
actually what could
Totally.
happen. So that makes it worse for us because we don't want to deal with it. So that whole idea of whatever, that was really, really helpful because I noticed it and I was like, okay, fine, whatever. If depression's coming, fine. You know what? I accept and allow it. You can come, you can hang out with me right now if you want to be depressed. And all of a sudden that started to break it because there was no more fear. If it comes, it comes. I'm going to deal with it right here. I'm going
Yeah.
to do the best I can, use whatever resources I need to use because, we can deal with this. But the fear of it was worse than actually what was happening.
Well, that's just it, right? It's our imagination. We let it run wild and it terrifies us and it screws us up. And that can cause that cycle to just start. And, I think a really good quick thing for me too, and this goes along with that, is just, I noticed for myself too, when I was reminding myself that you can have a bad day. It's okay. Like, even if you're living a good life, you're going to have bad days. We have this weird, we have this very weird notion in our heads that like a happy life, a good life is this perpetually perfect existence, but it doesn't, that's not life, right? Life has death, life has bad moments, life has struggles, life has challenges, and they're all okay. And reminding yourself that, hey, some days it's okay to have a bad day and that's fine. And I think that has really helped me. It seems so simple, but it's true. Like, to just take the pressure off, because I would feel bad and then I would get mad at myself because that was messing up me progressing in what I wanted to do and stuff and like blah blah. And it's like this like internal dialogue would start. And when I reminded myself, I was just like, oh yeah, I don't have to be mad at myself. There's no reason to. I'm allowed to have a shitty day here and there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so helpful. It's like just this perspective shift.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point. Just like allowing for it. Yeah, absolutely. Because a couple weeks ago when I got the vaccine, I was sick for like a week,
God,
and it
yeah,
was like terrible. But seeing that, like, it's just a bad week. Whatever,
yeah,
it'll pass. And then the cool thing was when it finally did end, and like I was able to get back into my routine of doing all the good things that we're about to talk about. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I felt like incredible, like
Oh
amazing.
yeah,
So yeah.
because you're like a total transition though.
Hmm.
I'm feeling like, yeah, it is. I think too. I think right there is the other point. It's so much of when you know, so much of depression too. I think an important thing we're overcoming it is recognizing what it is, recognizing what's causing it. Whether it's caffeine or what's causing your anxiety, what's causing your stress. Identifying these things and being aware of it is essential. And then starting to take action that will help you address them. Like, I know for me, for instance, like, you know, a while back and still in some sense, my student loan debt was a huge thing. I know it was for you. That was like really stressful and it seemed like an impossible thing. And I would never be able to deal with it. And that was causing me so much. And finally just, actually making the phone calls, actually addressing, actually, doing all these things that we push off, doing it now makes you feel so much better because you realize that it's possible. I think we tend to push things off and we tend to let our imagination run wild, and then it just goes right
Hmm.
crazy and we fall off that cliff. Right? Rather than just doing the little things now, the hard things sometimes, and preventing that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with paying off student debt, stuff like that, tracking it on paper is so awesome.
Oh yeah,
So like every month just sitting down and being like, okay, how much is left? How much should I pay this month? What other, so that way you can kind of track it over time because it becomes less of this imaginary thing and all of a sudden it's tangible. You can see that it's just something that eventually will go away.
yeah. Even to use even if it's like to use a smaller number so it's easier. Like if you have a credit card, you're like 5,000. Even if you can only pay $5 down a month, you'll start noticing that number drop, and you feel better and better because you also realize that you're moving forward in the direction you want to go rather than backwards or rather than staying where you are.
Mhm. Absolutely. So
Right.
I would say for the quick fixes for people who are feeling the blues right now, because it is Blue Monday, for people who are feeling the blues, stuff you can do right now: cut out alcohol, cut out drugs, limit your caffeine, read that book, Dare, uh, contact a counselor, reach out to your
Oh yeah.
friends and talk with your friends on a regular basis, also family members, maybe.
And
Yeah.
don't be afraid to have an open, honest conversation. I think most people are totally willing to talk about it and happy to talk about it. They just don't know how to talk about
Well, I
it.
remember last year when I was feeling really blue, we met up at that mall where we used to meet up,
Yeah.
and I was scared to be open with you about it because I was feeling really bad and I was scared. And
Yeah.
like I finally did, and you're like, that's that's totally cool. It's like that happens to everybody. It's okay.
Yeah, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So like being being able to have somebody that you can confide in, that you can talk to like that. And so if you can do that with friends, it's great. If you can't
Yeah.
do it with friends, that's what counselors are paid for. So like
Yeah.
there are really cheap ones you can get online. You can go to ones in person. Sometimes even medical insurance will pay for
Oh,
it. Yeah.
you know what? To that point too, it's funny. Like we feel like we have a hard time bringing these things up. I think sometimes because we have a different layer of expectations for ourselves than for other people. And I think getting over that, like recognizing that we're being extra hard on ourselves, that the things we're requiring of ourselves, we would never require of someone we love, like, is important. Like you would, if anybody you were friends with or loved or whatever wanted to talk about something like this, you would be happy to talk to them.
Well, it's
So, assume the same.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's basically this social embarrassment. Like,
Yeah.
it's he talks about it in that book Dare, where he was saying that like
Yeah.
most of us, if we have a panic attack, we go run to a bathroom. We'd prefer to have a heart attack and die alone in a bathroom than surrounded by
Yeah.
people that we know, because it's this social embarrassment. And when I used to do pickup with girls, like a lot of what we did was just social freedom exercises so that you'd be okay making a fool of yourself in front of people. So that
Yeah.
way you don't have to worry about a girl saying, no, I'm not interested in you. But it's like we are scared to reveal how we feel to other people because we're scared they'll reject us, we'll get cut off from society, and we'll die. It's easier to just
Yeah.
keep it all inside. And I've gone to counselors many times because for me it's very easy to tell them anything, because especially when you do it online,
Yeah.
because you never meet the people, and like sometimes you just talk with them on the phone. So I'll just tell them anything, because who the heck cares? They're never going to see me in real life. So that's like great.
Yeah. And you're paying him for that. It's great. You just
Mhm.
say whatever you want. It is. If you can be, I mean, if that's the only person you can be open with, that's still super helpful. And I think it's like, but I think that's one of the things that it takes, that personal honesty with yourself to really start to make to start to move forward, because you have to start like really being honest with yourself about what's going on and what you're facing. And I think that is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's get to the routines. So my
All right.
routines, I've talked about this before, but I like to sandwich my day. I I can choose to do stuff in the morning. I can choose to do stuff at night. Anywhere else in the day, it's kind of a crapshoot. But I know I can get stuff done in the morning and at night. So I'll
Yeah.
start with night because that's a lot smaller, but it's basically just kind of reflecting on the things that I'm grateful for in the day. So I do the small delights that we talked about, where every night before I go to sleep,
Oh
I
yeah.
write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And that's really helpful. Uh, and then I just, uh, that's pretty much it at the night.
Okay.
So
So my nighttime, yeah, I do the same thing. I always do that every night, and I love it. It's been so helpful. And then I always try to write. I like doing mindful breathing right before I fall asleep. It helps me relax. It helps me turn my mind off and just go to sleep. And I really find that helpful too. I sleep much better.
that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So then in the morning is usually when I spend a lot of time. And this is like we were talking about this earlier. Like this is my most valuable
Yeah.
time of the day. If
Yeah.
there's one part of my day that I will not give up, it is my morning, because it's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
amazing, you know? So like I wake up many hours before I have to do anything. And first thing I do is I let's see. Oh, I like I stretch and I'm like, oh, I feel great today. What a wonderful day to be alive. So like it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If it's not true today, it's going to be true in the future. So like, you know,
Yeah.
but just like saying that and stretching and being grateful to wake up in the morning is a great way to go.
Well, they've shown that actually vocalizing these things, though, whether it's true or not right at the moment for us, is actually very helpful for helping us, make that a reality, right?
Mhm.
So it is important to, like, that's why the small delights, acknowledging your gratitude. Saying it, writing it down is super helpful. It's really important.
Yeah. And then I do usually journaling, reading, and just contemplation. Actually, first thing before the journaling stuff, I sit down for compassion meditation. So on YouTube, I just search compassion meditation, and each morning I do one between like 5 and 15 minutes. And there's a whole bunch of them on there, but that way it just helps kind of connect my heart with the world. Because I did meditation for a long time, but at least for me, I find it more important to connect my heart because I'm more of a intellectual person. So making sure that I spend time connecting my heart is good for me. It may not be for everybody, but I think that it's good for me.
Well, you make a good point, right? I think 2 points to make is that everything we're talking about, these are short things that you add to your day that are hugely valuable, but there are also things that are plastic. They should be changed in accordance with what your needs, because everybody's different. But you can always find examples that are targeted in certain things that will help you, whether it's, like you said, like getting out of your head a little bit and being more aware of, the rest of the world and how you feel is helpful for you. So that works. And that's a good idea. Yeah. I think, go ahead,
so then I do reading and journaling. And so the reading I usually sit at a window. So I look outside, and it's usually like around the time when the sun's coming up. So I get to see the beauty of the sun rising every day.
Nice.
And I read first a book on like personal development. And it's really just the same 3 books that I read over and over again. It's The Magic
you're still doing that? Nice.
Still doing it every day for like 20 minutes every day. The Magic of Thinking Big, Think and Grow Rich, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. I just keep reading them over and over again because who was it? I think it was Charlie Munger or someone was saying that Raval Navakant. He's like, I would rather read the top 10 books over and over and over again than to try and read every book. And that made such an impact on me because I'm like, okay, what are the 3 best personal development books out there? These are probably those 3. So I'm just like, okay, just reading them. And every time I read them, I pick up something new, or it reminds me of something that I forgot, but they're loaded with information. And so like I do that first, and then I read for pleasure. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. People don't think about the importance that rereading, rereading stuff is crucial, because also we interpret things differently when we're at a different point in our lives. So going back to this material that's very valuable and well written and helpful, you'll constantly find new things, and you'll constantly be surprised by how you're seeing it differently because you've done it at a different time. And I think it's a good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah. So that's really good. And then I read for pleasure because like I love reading, and some days I'm able to, some days I'm not able to do it in the middle of the day, but I know every day in the morning I can schedule a little bit of time to do it. So like I spend time reading in the morning, and then I journal. And in the beginning of my journal, I have like a bunch of stuff written down that I want to read every day to like remind me of who I am, what my goals are, some positive mindset type of things that I've read somewhere else and it's impacted me. So I just have that in the beginning of my journal, and I read that every day. And then I write, and it's just free form writing, write whatever I want.
Yeah.
But I also write down 10 goals. So every day I write down 10 goals, and they can be the same, they can be different, but generally most of them are the same because these are the things that I'm working on. These are the things that I want to get. So I write down the goal and when I want to achieve it by. And then after I'm done that, I exercise. So
nice.
Yeah. So I make sure that I exercise every morning, and that's pretty much it for my morning routine.
To give people an idea, how long does that take you roughly?
Well, so I have done it previously where it's been like a half an hour, but like I said, this is my most valuable time of the day. So this is something that I love doing. So for me, it's about 3 hours total because I spend a lot of time reading. I spend like an hour plus reading, and then I spend about an hour exercising. And so that's about 3 hours total.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's crucial to wake up early and set that time aside, because it's too, you're setting part of your day aside for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing more valuable than that, especially for your mental health. And, it just, you're making a point to start your day focused on yourself and how
And
you
you're
feel
paying
and
yourself
feeling better.
first.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, like
you are. And I
already,
think,
like that's the coolest thing is like I wake up and already my day is a success. Like the
yeah.
first 3 hours are incredible. If I don't have the rest of the day, perfect day. So like, yeah, that's a great way to wake up every
Well,
day.
we were talking about before too, the problem is like once the day gets started, so to say, like you can't always predict what's going to happen. Things are going to happen that you might not be able, that you have to kind of work around or, accommodate whatever, and it's going to change what you can do. So really, I think there is something about having those routines in the morning and night that are really essential because it's your way of taking that day and making it yours. You start for yourself and you end for yourself. And I think that's really important.
Mhm.
And there's always
So,
a way to fit it in.
yeah. So how
Yeah.
about you? What do you do in the morning?
So in the morning, I mean, my night's pretty simple. Like you said, in the morning, I get up. I do my first of 3 walks in the morning. Usually right about sunrise. Because I have a dog, so it's fun and I enjoy it too. And so overall, I walk about 5 miles a day every day. So
Nice.
that's good. And it's always outside. I love it, no matter the weather. I don't care. The only time I didn't was when there was ice on the ground, but that's safety.
Yeah, but you're getting the
But yeah, so
fresh
it's
air, you're getting the sun,
yeah.
you're getting, I
Oh,
mean, the stimulation you get from being outside is so much more than we can get from a computer or a TV screen or anything.
Oh, dude, it's so funny too, because like literally every night, I think most nights, and one of my delights is always the sunrise and how the sky looks like every morning. It's amazing. So yeah, so that's awesome. I love doing that. Then I usually give myself about a half hour to just like kind of I wake up, I do a little bit of writing, I think about how I'm gonna plan my day, and then I set aside it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours for really doing work on things that are really for me. So like this would be like personal writing, reading, not for like projects that been like for fun. So I've been on it. I don't know why I've been reading a lot of like quantum physics stuff just because I'm interested, and I'll read stuff on like sometimes fantasy, sci-fi, things like that. And then I really like listening to uh while I'm writing and stuff, I'll listen to some of the motivational podcasts and stuff. So things like that I find very helpful and valuable. So I like those a lot. And it just gets me kind of like into my day in a really positive, good way. And like you said, like I'll write down my goals. I'll write down and I started instead of trying to I tried for a while to schedule my day rigidly, but I found that it was too much stress. So instead of doing that, I started writing down like 5 goals for the day and making them fairly simple and fairly open so that it just helps me kind of direct my day even when things happen. So even when things get crazy, and they can be simple, like like if it's you know, it can be like work on this for at least an hour, right? Work on this project for at least an hour. Go out and do something fun for an hour, like schedule some time to go do something for myself, like a hobby or
Mhm.
something. And those kind of little things, but it keeps it open ended so I can adjust it as needed. But I found that's been very helpful too. It just gives me like a little bit more direction, something to go back to if things get crazy during the day or I feel like things are getting out of hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Um, some other things that I do as well is usually I go for a walk outside in the like at a park after I have dinner. So like I'll have dinner
Oh,
and then I'll go
nice.
for a
Yeah.
walk to help digest. And then because we were talking about like how sleep is important, so I've been messing around with taking naps. So I take a 15-minute nap every day, right around noon, and also before the nap, I do a shaking exercise. So this is
What's
something that,
that?
okay, so I learned it initially as a Osho Kundalini meditation, where basically you just stand and shake.
Oh,
But
literally. Okay.
I also read about it, like a lot of the military special forces, like they know that's a way to get rid of a lot of stress in your body. And even
Oh,
it's something that animals do, like when they have a very fearful episode, like you'll sometimes see it on the nature channel where a gazelle outruns the predator and then you see it just like shake its whole body very vigorously from head to toe and then walk off. Like it kind of it releases a lot of pent up stress and energy in the body. And
I was
so
gonna
I
say it's
just,
like a good nervous energy release. That's cool. Yeah, it makes sense, right? You have
yeah,
all these things flowing through you, get them out.
exactly. So like
Yeah.
what I do is around noon every day, I just put on a 5-minute piece of music that just has like a very high vibration sound to it. and I just shake for 5 minutes, and then I take a nap. And if I fall asleep during the nap, it doesn't matter, but I don't want it to be more than 15 minutes because then I can go into deeper sleep and then I feel groggy waking up. So I just lay down for 15 minutes. And that's just another thing that helps to increase the rest and the recovery and get rid of the toxic energy in my body, just to help, because it's like the compound effect that we talk about. You can either compound in the stressors, so like the caffeine, the tension, all of that, or you can compound the relaxing, the release, and those types of things. So I'm trying to compound the relaxing and the release.
No, that's a good idea. And it's funny, like what I mentioned before too, like I really like after like the morning routine and with the evening one during the day too, I like naps are awesome. They do really help when I'm tired. I just do them when I'm tired. I don't try and, worry about it too much anymore. But I think, I've noticed that what's been really helpful for me too is stop like criticizing myself or berating myself because I don't get what I think I should have gotten done, if that makes sense. Like, instead of looking at like, I'm going to work on this thing for say, I'm going to work on my, whatever, grading work or this work for 2 hours. I'll say that instead of I'm going to get this done, because, we're really bad, I think, at recognizing how long things will take all the time, and we don't always know what's going to be required or whether, it's going to be difficult or hard or whatever. So a lot of times it's not an issue, but I think just scheduling time instead of a specific goal is better because it takes that pressure off and you're more likely to do it. It's like, I'm going to do this for 2 hours, not, I'm going to get this done. And I just noticed that helped me a lot too. It's like thinking about these things in a way that's more positive and compassionate to yourself and more consistent over time with getting it, sticking to it. Because I think it's one of the things why we all stop doing the things we should be doing is that we think we have to get all this stuff done and then we stress ourselves out and we stop doing it.
I mean, that's a great point. I think we read that in the Field Guide to a Happy Life,
Might have
where
been, yeah.
it was basically like the beginner blames others, the intermediate blames himself, but the master doesn't blame himself or others. And that's like where you're getting, where you're like, not going to blame yourself. Be easy on yourself. Yeah.
Hey, it's smart, right? We only, it's funny. Like, it's so funny that all these things that we all struggle with, so much of them are self-imposed, we're the cause of it. And all it does is make things harder. It doesn't make anything. I mean, that's always cracks me up, and we're all guilty of it. But it's like we constantly make our lives more difficult for ourselves, and it's insane. There's no reason to. Like, I always tell myself, like, do I really want to live this way? Like, is this really, like how I want to be? We should be trying our best to make things as easy for ourselves so we can be the person we want to be. Not, I think it's just amazing that's always the case. And we make it so hard all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think those are both of our routines for dealing with the lose. Anything else?
I was just going to say, I think that's, if people didn't notice, like our routines are pretty simple and they're not, because I think the important thing is that you're able to do it every day. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be a ton. It should be manageable and enjoyable, not difficult, not stressful, because that'll make you just stop immediately,
Absolutely. And like going off what you're saying there, doing what we do and habit stacking. So like putting it someplace, like you notice how I have a morning routine, an afternoon thing, and a night routine. So like I know those times every day. I know when I wake up, start the morning routine. I know when it's noon, do the afternoon routine. I know right before bed, do the night routine. But like maybe for you that doesn't work. Maybe it's when you get done work, you have to do it. Or when you go to the gym, you have to do it. And it's like stacking one habit on top of another, because then in your mind, it's time to do it.
Yeah, it anchors your day too. And it always gives you a place to return for that direction and control that can help you kind of like get out of that mindset of stress and worry and concern. And, and like you said too, it just depends on your day, whether you use your lunch hour or whatever. There's always, you got to, take the time to work little things in because they pay dividends. You'll feel better. And it just really helps.
Well,
and just taking any action helps, honestly. Like,
yeah. So that's a great point, is little things. So like, I know you probably listen, you're like, my morning routine is ridiculous. Well, my morning routine didn't start like that. My morning routine started with me reading a book in the morning. Like that's how it started. And then it built upon that as I started incorporating more things and saw the benefit of them. So like, be easy on yourself. Give like 70% effort, because the problem is most people put 100% effort in the beginning and they're like trying as hard as they can. And then after 2 or 3 days, they give up because they don't want to do that. So like, give 70% effort, do a little bit. Like if you want to do one thing, start with the small delights before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Danny and I both saw
awesome.
a huge impact of this, that like within a
like
week,
5 minutes.
Within a week, we noticed a significant positive improvement in our lives. Just before you go to sleep, write down 3 things you're grateful for. Or if you're not grateful for things yet, 3 things that weren't terrible that happened today.
Yeah.
Do that. Promise yourself you'll do that for 7 days. Guarantee you in 7 days, you will be in a better mind space.
I just want to make one more last point too. For the morning routine and the night routine, the way I started mine was I didn't do anything. I just woke up a half hour early, and I made a point of having 10 minutes where I just sat still in bed before I went to sleep. That was it. I didn't do anything. I just made a point of waking up, giving myself that time, and having that time at night. And I found pretty quickly that once I started doing that, I started to fill that time with things. It's like just I gave myself just like me time essentially just before the day started and at the end of the day. And it's doing that. I think you'll find very quickly that it's like important and you want it in your day because it makes your day yours at the start and the end. And I think that's really the crucial thing.
Yeah. It's like that saying, success is always intentional. And being successful is oftentimes the opposite of feeling blue, because when you're feeling blue, a lot of times it comes from this helplessness. Yeah. So you got to be intentional about it, and you got to plan for it. So I think that's it for me. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I hope this helps everybody. We'll be back midweek with a quick fix. Listen to us on all the podcast apps. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, share. It really helps us out. Click notifications. But it was a lot of fun. This was dealing with the Winter Blues, episode 123, Existential Stoic podcast. We'll be back midweek. Later, Randy.
Later, Danny.